Seems like every other day we hear of a new health study on the effects of wine. But while one says it increases lifespan, another says it increases the risk of cancer. One will say it fights heart disease, another says it raises blood pressure. It's enough to drive you to drink. In our culture, no other beverage has the same stature as wine. At restaurants, only wine gets its own menu. And sure, beer is more popular, but you don't drink beer at Mass, or at least you're not supposed to. The Greeks had a god of wine. The Jews have a prayer over the wine. Every book of the Bible mentions either wine or grapes, except Jonah. But if you're familiar with the story, a guy gets swallowed by a giant fish, makes himself at home for a couple days, then gets vomited back out. I think it's heavily implied that somebody was drinking. Some people even have high-tech, climate-controlled chambers in their home, wine cellars that monitor very closely the temperature, and the humidity for the tiniest fluctuation. Well, even the baby's room doesn't have that. Now, I'm not a connoisseur, I'm not a winey or a wino, I don't know what you call yourselves. Most of the time, frankly, I'd rather have a handful of grapes than a glass of wine. Not all the time, but usually. So I was wondering, why is it that wine is so intoxicating? What's it ever done to deserve such devotion and fanfare? Well, I was very surprised to learn that a case could be made that wine has saved more people than Superman. You see, humans have been making wine for thousands of years, but they never fully understood the process until the 1850s. France's wine industry was in trouble. Wine was spoiling, profits being lost, something had to be done. They called in chemist Louis Pasteur, like a superhero. I don't know, maybe they shined a giant spotlight into the sky with an image of a Bunsen burner or a microscope. And he answered their call. Pasteur shows up in Lille, France, and he starts systematically studying healthy and diseased wines. At the time, fermentation, which is the process that turns the sugar in grapes into alcohol, was thought to be merely a chemical process. Pasteur showed that it's a biological one, and that yeast are in fact a microorganism that eats sugar and excretes alcohol. So today, what's a multi-billion-dollar industry is based on the waste product, and I'm being polite, of a microbe. And different microbes were causing the wine to spoil. But Pasteur came up with a solution, a heating process called, coincidentally, pasteurization, which would kill the bad microbes and the wine would last longer. He also designed industrial equipment that would do it on a large scale efficiently, and he released all the patents to the public so that he didn't profit at all from it. Turns out the process could be applied to milk and cheese and other products, increasing shelf life and decreasing the incidence of food poisoning. So, what's next? Ah, yes. As if that wasn't enough, he then finally put to rest the myth of spontaneous generation. He showed that life always has to come from other life. And this wasn't known at the time, that microorganisms are all around us, in our water and in the air. And he realized if they could be the cause of fermentation and putrefaction, maybe they're the cause of contagious disease. That led him to develop the first vaccine for rabies and immunization practices that we still use today. So, even though we've been using yeast for thousands of years to make bread, wine, and beer, it wasn't until Pasteur that mankind finally started to domesticate microbial life and to understand and appreciate the infinitely great power of the infinitely small. So that's how a problem in the French wine industry led directly to the development of the germ theory of disease and to modern health practices which have saved countless lives and doubled the human lifespan since his time, which leaves us more time to drink wine. So the next time you raise a glass, just take a moment, for a little shout out for Louis Pasteur, super chemist, and The little unsung heroes, the yeast, the true microbrewers then and now. And if somebody gets snooty with you, just tell them they're drinking yeast pee. I want to thank Tara Fredette, Mike Capizzola, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, with whom this wouldn't have been possible. And come see me do a full show tomorrow night at the Punchline here in San Francisco. Thank you. Good night.